What's up, meta nerds? This video is all about the Kaminoan species. Kaminoans were an average height of 2.2 meters, or just over 7 feet tall, making them noticeably taller than your average human. But their lifespan was very similar to us Earthlings, with an average Kaminoan living into their 80s. What is most striking about their appearance is their long, thin limbs, and their extremely long necks that end in this relatively small and angular head. Over millions of years, the species we know as Kaminoans evolved from more primitive aquatic creatures that were found on the planet Kamino. It's said that the shape of their hands and feet represent adaptations that were useful for the Kaminoans' ancestors, who used to live and hunt along the ocean floor. One of the most unique things about their limbs was that their way of walking is called digitigrade, where an animal walks on its toes without their heel touching the ground, the same way dogs, cats, and werewolves walk around. They had these large glossy eyes, and they actually saw color in the ultraviolet light spectrum. So although their buildings, hallways, and rooms all look like they were bright white, to Kaminoan eyes, all of these different surfaces had a range of colors that were seen to be just as different to a Kaminoan, as the different colors within a rainbow all seem unique and different to a human. I mentioned that the Kaminoans have a similar lifespan as humans, but the rate at which they matured is slightly different. A Kaminoan was considered an adult and able to reproduce at only 11 years old, and they stayed in their physical prime until about the age of 40. Around 80 years old, their body started to break down, but of course they were excellent at modifying the genome, and a Kaminoan by the name of Kinaha was able to live to be over 3,000 years old after she modified her genes so that she could take extremely long trips through hyperspace. The only real physical differences between a male and female Kaminoan is that all of the females were bald, just like with the Weequay, but the males had these small fins on the top of their head. The early history of the Kaminoans is not well recorded, but the first event that we know about is called the Great Flood. This was a cataclysmic event that occurred after the end of the Ice Age, and it brought the Kaminoan species to the brink of extinction. It appears that Kamino is very similar to how Earth is now, but after the Great Flood, all of this planet's landmass was completely covered up by water. Luckily for them, they had already been a highly scientific people, and they had the engineering capability to erect these large cities that jutted out of the water. The only problem was, even though this helped save millions of Kaminoans, it still was an incredibly cramped way of living compared to having whole continents to live on before. Because of this, leaders of the Kaminoan people started to resort to selective breeding and directed all of their scientific efforts into better understanding genetics and worked to the point where they could be the masters of the art of cloning. The only Kaminoans who were able to reproduce were those who were most likely to have genetically superior offspring. This practice of selective breeding was carried out all across the planet Kamino. And over generations, it developed a Kaminoan culture with a calm, unattached, and practical thinking people. They came to think of themselves as superior to all other forms of life, and because of this were both xenophobic and isolationist. But of course there are different levels to Kaminoan society, and they developed a sort of caste system, with higher ranking Kaminoans being superior to the lower ranking Kaminoans. One way that you could tell different members of this caste apart was by looking at their eyes. Higher caste Kaminoans had gray eyes, middle class Kaminoans had yellow eyes, and low class Kaminoans had blue eyes. This caste system also reflected the type of job that you had, with the gray eyes working in administration, yellow eyes had the skilled work like many Kaminoan armor smiths, and blue eyes were for manual labor, doing the menial tasks around the Kaminoan cities. But this was also seen in Kaminoan slave clones, which were some of the few Kaminoans to ever leave their home planet, with many of these slaves working on mining colonies, one of which was on Sub-Terrell, the planet where Dexter Jetster ran into Kaminoan miners. But the worst eye color you could get were green eyes, and these were seen to be so genetically inferior that they were actually a threat to Kaminoan society, and therefore these Kaminoans were killed shortly after birth. This mastery of cloning technology, combined with a lack of ethics, was what made Sifo-Dyas confident that the Kaminoans would be able to create a clone army for the Galactic Republic. We know that the genetic template was from Jango Fett, but they didn't get it right the first time. And of the original 12 specimens that were produced, 6 died during incubation, and these other 6 were about to be terminated by the scientists, but a Mandalorian by the name of Cal Scarata was able to save these clones and raise them to fight alongside him. To thank the Kaminoans for the creation of the clone army, the Galactic Senate made a new seat, and Hale Bertoni came to represent the planet Kamino. Of course, she wanted the war to last as long as possible, and was perfectly fine with the Republic borrowing more and more money to buy more and more clones. This relationship with the Galactic Republic, of course, backfired when it became the Empire. Their technology was deemed too important to fall into enemy hands, and the entire planet was put under Imperial Rule. Some Kaminoans, however, were not used to being under anyone's rule, and developed their own clone army in secret. But Darth Vader became aware of this plot, and he sent the 501st Legion and allowed Boba Fett to command it. And as you might imagine, this dream team was able to eliminate this new clone army, and all of the Imperial dissenters were put to death. Because of their hatred of the Empire, after the Battle of Endor and the rise of the New Republic, the leaders of Kamino decided they wanted to become a part of their Senate, and it's said that during this time Kaminoan society flourished, and they became less xenophobic and self-centered, and they provided an enormous amount of aid during the Yuuzhan Vong War. That's it for their history, but you definitely want to hear these cool facts and behind the scenes stuff. It's said that Jedi Master Yarael Poof wasn't in Attack of the Clones because he was too similar in appearance to the Kaminoans, and George Lucas felt that casual viewers would be just confused. Originally, they were going to have androgynous voices so that you couldn't tell if they were male or female, but this idea was scrapped by the design team. Some people believe that the Kaminoans could give off light, but this idea hasn't been confirmed in any sources. And definitely the most interesting behind the scenes fact is that in the video game LEGO Star Wars, you can see Kaminoans working down the hall from Jango Fett's quarters, and if you go into that room, it's possible to activate a disco dance floor, and these 3 Kaminoans start to disco to the disco remix of the Star Wars main title. Now, this has a lore component as well, because although the Kaminoan society was very reserved, there was only one place where they were allowed to display their emotion. It was during a very passionate ballet called the Nahra. In it, Kaminoans would do these dramatic acting out of all kinds of the normal emotions that living creatures have. The few outsiders that were able to view this dance, to see the combination of emotionless Kaminoan faces dramatically acting out with their long, thin limbs. Well, that's it for the Kaminoan species. If you liked it, go ahead and hit that like button, and be sure to leave a comment down below if I missed any cool facts, or if you have a suggestion for future videos. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at MetaNerdsLore, so you can see us build Star Wars props and cosplays, along with some other cool Star Wars stuff. If you want to help support this channel, check out the description below for our Amazon store and our Patreon. And be sure to subscribe, because we're making videos like this every single day. But more important than all that, remember, this is a Kaminoan's happy face, and the Force will be with you, always.